questions about Ohio State and the validity of where they were at and where they're at in the playoffs. But look, I think we always knew that this team could show up when they wanted to show up, and they did against Clemson. I thought they were impressive. Justin Fields played the best he's ever played. So I think this is going to be an unbelievable matchup. I think Alabama is playing at a level on offense that we maybe have never seen, and that was reflected in the awards, the individual awards, let alone where they're at here in the national championship. So I'm looking forward to some fireworks. I think it's going to be a great matchup. I think Ohio State's going to bring it, and we'll see how it goes.
Tim, you're next.
I think it's going to be a great matchup. I think you got two blue bloods, but I think it's not just about their names. It's about the talent these players that are on the field this year. Both of them have a lot of talent, a lot of athletic ability, and they have turned that into a lot of production, especially Ohio State recently. I mean, what we saw against Clemson, you know, when you watch the TV copy, you can't necessarily tell what happens in the back end, but then you go back and you watch the film and you say, wow, it wasn't busted coverages. It was literally the athleticism by Ohio State to run by Clemson over and over and over again. And make those plays. I think and then you flip it to Alabama and you see their athleticism, their playmakers, what Mac Jones has done, top QBR in the history of the metric. There's just some staggering stats that you could look at. But what I think it sets up to be is a great championship under the lights at night. Excited about it. Can't wait for this thing. I think it's going to be a great matchup.
And Roman, your first CFP National Championship game with SEC Network. You excited?
I'm beyond excited. I'm just so fired up that we actually get to go to the game. I'll get to see Jordan again for my second time ever in life. That'll be another great thing. And I you know, when it comes to the game itself, I think it just really just hitting home what Tim said was that, I mean, it's tons of NFL quality talent on both sides of the ball for both of these teams. I think that's one of the things that I'll be looking forward to is just the big names, who's going to show up in the big moments, what teams are going to make what plays. And, you know, we can go on and on about scheme and this, that, and other. But I think in the first quarter and a half, we're going to know a lot about how this game is going to kind of unfold. And a lot of it's going to come down to how Alabama is going to be able to try to defend Ohio State. Will Alabama be able to force a couple turnovers? And what's the health situation of Justin Fields? If he's 100% healthy and able to do what he does, which is run the ball, being a threat, running the ball, and also being a big threat and just being able to show off his arm talent, then it's going to be a totally different game. And if he's not that, if we don't get the full version of him, I don't think we get the full anticipate. We're not going to be able to get everything that we're anticipating to see. So I think we'll know in the first quarter and a half how this thing may unfold.
Thanks, guys. So if you have a question, please use the raise hand function and I'll unmute your mic and call on you. And if I don't mention it when I call on you, please share your outlet before asking your question. And we will start with Michael Casagrande from AL.com. Michael, you should be able to unmute.
Yep, thanks. Thanks for doing this, guys. Tim, I just was curious about Mac Jones. I don't know if you've seen the picture where he came to see you after your Heisman when he was a kid. In the mall and waited online for a few hours to meet you, and you were kind of his inspiration. I wonder if you've seen that and if you had a chance to talk to him about anything about that in your relationship with him.
Yeah, I have seen that, and I have had the chance to talk to him. And I tell you what an amazing young man, and his mindset. I love so much about him is his eye of the tiger mentality. Is his choice to go to Alabama when he knew they had a bunch of other quarterbacks. They were bringing in another 5-star, and you know what? He didn't flinch with it. And actually, one of the first times that I got a chance to interview him, he brought up one of the quotes that I always said: "Hard work beats talent. Talent doesn't work hard." And so it's, you know, to be able to have an impact on someone, you know, means a lot. You know, I always would try to take the responsibility, I believe it was, of trying to be a good role model. And if I had, you know, any form of an impact on him, you know, that, you know, is awesome. But I think he's such an amazing young man. If I wasn't in the picture, he would probably be doing the same thing. So grateful if I did have an impact in his life. But I tell you what he's done, the season he's had, you know, I honestly think he should have gotten more votes for the Heisman. I think the right guy won it, but I think Mac should have been even higher up there. What he did, I just don't think people appreciate it enough. I really don't. I think he was so deadly accurate with the deep ball. He made so few mistakes. He very rarely ever threw it where it wasn't super catchable, where they could get run after the catch. He very ever threw it to the wrong guy. You never see him make mistakes. Like even his picks, whereas, it was a tip versus Georgia. That happens, right? And so I just think what he did it's incredible. It was a great season, and I think he's earned his way into probably being a first-round pick.
Thanks so much. Next, we have Porter Hayes from Sports and Culture Sports Media. Porter, you should be able to unmute.
Thanks, guys, for taking the call. I just would like to get each one of your thoughts on the availability of Waddle. And being former athletes yourself, how long would it take him to get to where he's not 100%, but effective to where Ohio State's got to start game planning against him? And is his presence alone just enough to where they got to keep an eye on him?
Let's start with Jordan on that.
I think it's huge. I think you know a lot about how he feels and how his mental approach to this, right? I mean, anytime you have an injury, it's about how that injury responds full speed. I think the fact that they're saying it's a game time decision means that he has tested it enough and as much as he can in practice, so that the mental hurdle, I think, is limited. Now, that can all change when the game happens, but the type of player he is, to your point, the last part of that question, he absolutely is a weapon just being on the field and how they have to defend him. If you look at what Florida did, Florida really tried to take away Devontae Smith. They didn't do a good job of it. He still got 15 receptions, 180-something yards, but they made a point to try to double him, play over the top of him. And who had a big game catching the ball? Najee Harris. Well, that would be a Jaylen Waddle. That would be a John Mechie. So just having him on the field takes attention away from Devontae. It means you can't just double him every play because you don't know how Waddle is going to respond or how healthy he is. So I think there's a little gamesmanship. I think we see him, and I think we'll know a lot early on just how healthy he is based on how they use him.
Yeah, I think this is where scouting and game planning really comes into play pregame. Both teams get a chance to watch him in warm-ups. If you're Alabama, do you do your warm-ups with him off-site somewhere? If they can, just to be able to evaluate and see, because Ohio State's going to be watching. If he looks good, then they're probably going to be adjusting. Okay, we're going to be able to see this guy looks ready to go. I know in championship games we played in, we did the same thing to opposing players that were possibly injured. Is you want to evaluate them, and if they look really, really good, then you were going to adjust to that. If they didn't, then you knew, okay, we can go with the, plan A. So I think, that pregame, we'll find out a lot about Jaylen Waddle. But, man, if he is ready to go, wow, what a difference maker that is. What a change it's a game-changing guy that you have, and it's a totally changing of the game plan for Ohio State, in my opinion. If he can really get up and go, the way that he was able to against Georgia, that's someone that you have to respect. You have to put a safety over the top because he's one of the most explosive players in college football.
So I'm with Tim on this. I think it's a little late if you want to just now try and game plan if you see him warm it up. I think it's a little too late for them. But I do think Ohio State has to have this in mind, that you have to prepare like he will be out there. That's the safest way to do it. And then react if he's not out there. So they have to prepare and have the mindset that Waddle's going to be out there, understanding you have to respect his speed, his ability to be able to go downfield, be able to go up and jump in high point the ball the way he does. He's definitely a problem. And I figure that Alabama will not only use him in different ways, but they will try and find ways to get him the ball securely and get him on the edges and get him going early. And if you get him the ball, whether he has 2 catches or 8 catches, the fact that he's out there, like Tim said, you have to have a safety over the top. You have to be aware when he goes in motion of the things that they can do. And can you imagine the lineup where it's Devontae Smith, Mechie, you got Jaleel Billingsley, and Najee Harris all being a threat in the receiving game? That's a lot of playmaking ability between those guys. And it's just more threats for Alabama's offense. And they've been full of those all year long. It's just really hard to imagine because I think Nick Saban does not want Jaylen Waddle to play. I just think it would hurt him too bad to see if anything else could happen to him, that he wants him to be able to leave campus, that he was trending in the right direction, that he will not continue to set back his career at all. But I think Jaylen Waddle personally wants to play, and I think he wants to be out on the field to be able to go out the way that he would love to, which is playing in a national championship game.
Thanks, guys. Next, we have Zach Braziller from New York Post, and I'll remind you that if you have questions, please raise your hand with the raise hand function. Zach, you should be able to unmute.
Thanks. Tim, I actually had a baseball question for you, if that's okay.
It's a little tough to hear you, Zach. Can you speak up a bit?
Can you hear me better now?
Still a little quiet.
Okay, let me fix the audio. Hold on. Sorry.
That's okay. We'll have Paris join the Zoom availability.
She's trying.
Zach, we can come back to you. Next, we'll go to Jake Wimberly from the Zone 105.9. Jake, you should be able to talk.
Hey, guys, appreciate you doing this. This is for Roman. We're looking at the quarterbacks, and Roman as a defensive player, former defensive player, the quarterbacks are going to get all the attention here. But when you look at the physicality that Ohio State brings with Trey Sermon, Master Teague is supposed to be back for this ball game. And the way that the Ohio State can run the football, this looks to be the most physical football team that Alabama will have played up to this point. How does that, how does that change your mind or maybe let you look at this game? Can Ohio State use that as an advantage to slow this thing down and maybe offer Alabama something a little different they haven't seen all year?
So I don't think you got to understand who Alabama is, which is they are really big up front. So I don't think you're going to be able to just move them or just out physical them. I think you can have some success running the ball and what that they do, because I think Trey Sermon is really good running back, and I think he's playing at an extremely high level. He reminds me of a young Todd Gurley when I see him run, and I think he can be imposing. When it comes to actually physically dominating Alabama's at the line of scrimmage, I think that's just another thing it's hard to do, because Alabama, in the way that they do that, they try and get bigger. When you get big, they get big. And they have a lot of really big people on the defensive side. So I think it's going to come down to scheme. And also the fact that you can take one guy, you can have one less guy in the run fit when you have a healthy Justin Fields, who's always a threat to run the ball in any type of handoff situation. So that's why I think he's going to play a big part in this run game as well, is if his health if he's truly healthy, that Justin Fields can really offset a lot of these things, because he takes another guy, because you always have to have eyes on him as well. But Ohio State's going to be able to run the ball. Alabama's not been great at stopping the run, especially when teams have been able to speed up the tempo or do some tempo situations to kind of make Alabama get more vanilla or kind of make them kind of hold steady in their gaps.
Zach, we're going to go ahead and try you again. Is your audio any better?
Is this better now?
So
Yes.
much better. Yes.
All right, sorry. I said I wanted to ask Tim a baseball question, if that's okay.
Sure.
I guess it's obviously there was no season last year, Tim. I mean, what are your plans, moving forward with the Mets, and what are your plans? What are your thoughts going forward about playing baseball?
Sorry, the second half totally broke up. I heard the beginning. I'm in the cage swinging. Been, all the time training. So we're getting after it, and so planning for it and training hard. Sorry I couldn't hear the rest of the question, but that's the plans of right now.
Thanks so much. Now we have Pranav Rama. Pranav, you should be able to unmute.
This is kind of a question for Tim, but I guess all of you guys could answer this if you wanted to. As Alabama's greatness has been seen throughout the years with Nick Saban and his coaching, why do you think they've been able to consistently stay on the top?
We'll start with Tim, and then we'll go to Roman and Jordan.
Yeah, it's I think for a lot of reasons. Number one, because of Nick Saban, because of great coaching, because their ability to learn, grow, and adapt no matter what the circumstances, the situation, no matter if it's they're trying to win with great defense, or they're winning with a great running game, or they have a great quarterback. They adapted to Tua. They adapted to Jacob Coker. They adapted to, they've always find a way to do it in some way different. They've done it with different offense coordinators, defense coordinators, but the consistent piece is great recruiting, great coaching, and then they're able to adapt and figure the rest out. And so I think you got to give Saban a lot of credit in the recruiting process, whatever his coordinators are. And I think, that's been the consistent thing is they've won in recruiting and they've won in coaching.
It's true. Nick Saban's the best coach of our lifetime. And so they're really good at the X's and O's, the details in which it takes to win every game. And like Tim said, they're always adjusting. They don't stay the same. No matter what players they get, they do what their players do well. And it's not so much about what you have to do, what we're going to make you do, but we find out what they do well, and then we allow them to do that. And he also recruits the best players. So when you get the best players with the best coaches that prepare the same, and they humbly recruit these guys. Well, they get these guys and they make them humble, because the competition, you don't get to just come in and play because you're a highly recruited player. You have to earn the right to play. And that standard does not change. And that does something for a lot of guys when you have to earn the right to play and you just don't get to go out there and play because you're highly recruited. And not everybody has the luxury to be able to do that and force kids to kind of humble themselves and do it their way.
I don't have much to add there. It's both Tim and Roman are completely right. It's a competitive culture, and it's a culture of focus. Just watch these kids do interviews. They're like robots, and it's not in a bad way. It's just there is an intense focus and an intense.
They don't give away anything, Jordan.
What?
They don't give away anything.
Right, but I mean, it's not like they're all saying the same thing. Like they were told to say this or avoid this. There is just an intense focus, an intense competitive nature, and a singular focus that Saban's always been able to get out of his players that I think adds to everything that Tim and Roman just said.
Thanks, guys. Next, we have Porter Hayes. Porter, you should be able to unmute.
Guys, the most impressive thing I've seen about Ohio State is just how they were able to offensively take Brent Venables out of his game. Almost, and he done it last year other than the pick by Justin Fields. I mean, he's made him almost like his kryptonite. So how important is that to keep Alabama's defense off guard and really confuse them offensively?
We'll start with Jordan first.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you watch the film against Clemson, tempo was a big problem for Clemson. And I think when you watch Ohio State, the reason they were successful in the run game was tempo. And if you look back at Alabama's track record this year, it had them a few weeks after the Ole Miss game, and that was something we asked Pete Golding and Nick Saban about. And they said, look, we've been forced, because there was some youth early in the season on that side of the ball, and because tempo provided such a problem, we've been forced to simplify. And I think you could almost relate Nick Saban and his core philosophy on defense as a pro-style offense, right? He wants to have an answer for everything. There are multiple options and adjustments for every formation, for every look. And when you face tempo, it takes a second to get aligned. And if you really flip on the film against Clemson, that was the problem. The defensive line got blown back because they were late getting their hand in the ground. Just watch specific plays. The D tackle or the 3 technique will just be getting his hand in the ground when the ball is snapped. And I'm not a defensive lineman, but I played offense and I was up close under center with those guys all the time. When they have a chance to anchor in their stance and be ready for impact and jump the snap, they're going to hold steady when you're a good athlete. Clemson couldn't do that. And so Sermon was able to get going downhill quickly because of the tempo. So that's going to be Alabama's biggest, I think, thing to watch is how they simplify and how they're able to respond to some of the tempo and even more importantly, the sugar huddle, right? When the offensive lineman gets 2 or 3 yards away from the ball and the tight end is the last one to adjust, defenses adjust off that guy. So interesting to watch how Alabama plays that. If they stop doing formation-based adjustments, if they kind of play more vanilla is a bad way of putting it, but more simple so their guys can play faster and be ready for the snap. So that's what I'd be watching most, because I think that's why Ohio State had a ton of success against Clemson.
Roman?
Yeah, you're right. I think Alabama will have to play simple. They will do more zone. So then when people come in motion or you get a late shift, you just pass it. And that is how you continue to keep everybody's eyes in the backfield, and everybody has the same fits. The run fits don't change. Everything's kind of similar, right? And I think they've learned from the mistakes that they made early in the year. And like we said earlier, that Alabama does a really good job of just learning from their mistakes, evolving, not kind of just continue to try and fit, trying to make something up. They do what their players do better. And I think zone coverage this year has been one of the biggest things that I've seen Alabama do differently when it comes to their defense. They're playing way more zone defense on first and second down, and then being able to blitz or do some other things on third down to be competitive. It's been very interesting to see. I'm just really looking forward to, because I think this Ohio State has so many explosive players. Trey Sermon is a beast. Master Teague was playing at a high level before he got injured. They got these guys on the outside that can run by anybody. But I don't think they can just line up their deep threat wide receivers and say that they're just going to go beat Alabama's man-to-man coverage against Patrick Surtain and Josh Jobe. They're going to have to do something, whether it's a bunch of crossing routes, maybe putting these guys in motion to get them off just this press man-to-man coverage, because Clemson didn't press them. They got free releases and they got going down the field before Clemson ever had a chance. And I don't think Alabama's going to do that. They learn from those mistakes. But I think the tight ends of Ohio State could pose a problem for Alabama, because Alabama has struggled versus the tight ends playing man-to-man coverage, whether it's with a safety or a linebacker at times, and also how good they are in the run game when it comes to blocking as well at the point of attack. So that'll be an interesting matchup that I'll be watching. Not so much on the outside, but interior with the tight ends, how the Ohio State uses those guys.
Well, I really liked how Ohio State was aggressive and went right at Clemson. I think when you face a Venables defense, you got to be aggressive because he tries to cheat a lot. So in the running game, he won't just necessarily play 4 down guys and 2 backers. He'll play 4 down, 1 backer, and he'll have a safety coming down late to kind of make that 6th man. And so you got to be if it's in the running game, you got to be aggressive. That inside zone has to hit it hard. And if that linebacker coming down, or if a deep safety's that guy coming down, then make the tackle at 6 yards. It's a 6-yard gain. And I think the same thing in their coverage is Ohio State, there wasn't a lot of dink and dunk. It was when they're going after their coverage, because it's such an aggressive coverage, it's down the field. And I think some of those parallels play well into the Alabama game. I think for, not as much in the running game, but in the passing game, if you want to be successful against Bama, then it's not going to be with dink and dunk. It's not going to be with a play action, crossing routes, flat routes. They're just too good, and they make open field tackles. If we've seen the teams that get chunks against them, they're down the field. It's what Ole Miss did. It's what Florida did. It is getting those big plays down the field, even against the great corners that Alabama's had. They're great corners, but they've given up some big plays. They get onto the safeties as well. And so I think there's going to be a lot of Ohio State that's going to be learning from the Ole Miss game, and they're going to be learning from the Florida game. I think they're going to be trying to repeat a lot of those same things that we saw that made Florida's offense and Ole Miss successful against Bama's defense.
Thanks, guys. Next, we have Ron Wallace from Ball Down South Sports Network. Ron, you should be able to unmute.
Good morning, guys.
Morning.
I got a lot of questions, but I'm gonna go ahead and start with you, Tim. Tim, you won the Heisman Trophy. Devontae Smith has won the Heisman Trophy. Getting such a prestigious award and still having to play a lot more football, how were you able to keep your mind right and not saying, I know I won a Heisman, so I'm the best player out here, but to keep focused on the game at hand and complete the task?
Well, I think it's a really good question. I think it's important to understand why you won the award in the first place. It wasn't just because I was able to do some good things on the field. No, it was because I had a great coaching, a defense that got us the ball back, and an amazing offensive line, Percy Harvin, Lewis Murphy, Cooper, all these dudes that help make plays. And so, and you hear that so much from the Alabama guys is, yes, individual awards, but they come because the team operated together. And so I tried to, to focus on that yes, this was an individual award, but it's really, the only reason I could be there is because I had great teammates that supported me and gave me the opportunities to do that. And I think that's the same way for Alabama, right? Devontae wouldn't be as successful if Mac wasn't as accurate. And, you know, Mac wouldn't be as successful if Devontae didn't get open all the time. And same with Najee and a lot of these guys is, and we're talking about these top teams, is their talent all over the field that's helping one another. And I think that's really important to understand. And then it's also, you know, being focused on the task at hand. If you're focused on the past, then you're not locked into the present, game planning for the future. So that was a big mentality for me. But I think that's something that Alabama does so well, is you don't hear them really talk about the past, and you don't hear them look too far into the future. They are locked into the present. They are focused, and that's one of the best things I think Nick Saban does.
Thanks, guys. Next is Ryan Fowler from Tide 100.9. Ryan, you should be able to unmute. Ryan, are you able to unmute? Ryan, do we have you? All right, we'll come back to Ryan. Next, we have Donnie Woods from World Exposure Report. Donnie, you should be able to unmute.
This message is for Tim Tebow. First of all, thanks for all three of you guys being on today. Tim, Mac Jones has said that you've been his role model growing up. Have you had any conversations with him this week leading up to national championship games as far as advice?
I've had a couple conversations with him. I got the chance to do a couple interviews with him, so we talked a little bit before and after. Mac doesn't need any advice from me. He's had one of the best seasons in college football history. But I just also thanked him for the way he's handled himself, carried himself, being a Jacksonville boy. Just proud of that, and I think he's done everything right. And you know, he's had an unbelievable season, and honestly, I think he's done even better than a lot of people have given him credit for, and he's got a lot of credit. I think he's been even better than that, though. I mean, we've talked to, you know, Trevor came in second. Trevor's an unbelievable player, but in my opinion, their seasons weren't very comparable. Mac has just been that good.
Thanks, guys. We're going to try Ryan again. Ryan, are you able to unmute?
Hey, I think I got you guys now. I appreciate it. I'd love to hear you guys maybe talk about Ohio State's defense. The secondary, I think, is ranked 117 out of 127. Is that what you guys see on that secondary? And maybe that's where Alabama has success with their offense.
Let's start with Roman there.
Go over that one more time. Say that last part again.
Yeah, just their defense. I think it's ranked 117 in the pass defense. Really kind of emphasize Ohio State's defense and maybe what you guys see and how they'll match up against Alabama.
Yeah, I think they, you know, I don't hate Ohio State's scheme and what they do. I think they're really disciplined in what they do. They have a good understanding of what they're trying to get executed every time. The only question mark I have is with their corners at times, especially with Wade, is that his eyes are too much in the backfield. And at some point, even when you're playing zone, your eyes have to pay attention to the wide receiver that's in your zone, because eventually it turns into your guy. And, you know, if you have undisciplined eyes, you're not going to be consistent. And the same thing that Tim hit on earlier when it comes to preparation and doing all the right things and executing and being disciplined in your technique. And athleticism and ability is great, but technique eventually wins out at the end. And so some inconsistencies in technique is what I see that Alabama could take advantage of. But overall, I love Ohio State's ability. I love the way that they play simple, that they just run and hit, that they have a lot of guys that can run. They got some coverage linebackers in Pete Warner, who I think is a really good coverage guy, who they're not afraid to put him and line him up on a wide receiver, a tight end, running back. It doesn't matter. They all understand what they're trying to get executed, and they go out there and play fast. And that's all that they do. And I think it's going to be, sometimes when you play against a simple defense, it's a little bit more difficult because they don't give up things, and that they're just really simple. They're going to line up and do a lot of the same things over and over and over. But how can you, as an offense, be able to out-execute them all the way down the field?
I guess
Jordan,
I
you want
can
to go
jump
next?
in. The scheme's not the same, but I think a little bit of the principle is going to be the same with Ohio State's defense. Excuse me, and Arkansas's defense. I think Arkansas had the mentality of keep everything in front. So what that made Alabama's offense do is in their play action deep routes, when they have options, most of those options turn into shutdowns, comebacks, curls, corner stops. And I think that'll be similar in this game. I think Mac Jones will be playing a lot of stuff off the safeties and the linebackers and finding the zones in between them. And I think that's going to be really big, is for him to be on the same page as his receivers. I think Ohio State, there'll be times when they play aggressive, but I think the majority of it is, hey, keep this thing in front of us and let's come up, see if they'll, have an incomplete pass, if we can stop them on first down, get them in the 3rd and long. And so I think there's going to be a huge battle in this game of Mac seeing the underneath coverage in the linebackers and being able to put it in between those windows. And I think Ohio State's going to say, okay, we're going to give up some yards, but you got to earn it, and you got to earn those touchdowns. And so I think that's going to be a little bit. So I think it's really important in this game that Alabama is patient, right? So many of these games, it's been 3-4 plays, touchdown, 3-4 plays, touchdown. It's okay to control the time of possession. I think Mac really has to be patient, accept the running game, accept the check down, and be methodical with it, because I think that is, so many times we use a quarterback, take what they give you as a negative. But I think, especially in this game, I think it will be a huge positive, because that's how I believe Ohio State's going to play it.
It's a great point, and I think we have to be careful just looking at stats and saying that is the truth. Because when you win every game and when you score a lot of points on offense, teams have to throw the football.
Yeah.
So are they one of the best pass defense in the country? No. But are they 116th, 117th? No, I don't think so either. And I think Tim makes a great point. They do a great job of keeping things in front of them. One of the most underrated aspects of this Ohio State secondary is that ability. Here's a stat for you. Only 3 teams all year out of their, 7 games completed a ball that was thrown more than 25 yards downfield. And only 1 team completed more than 1. And that was Indiana. Indiana did have some success, and it was, to Roman's point, Ohio State's eyes got lazy on the back end. But that's 1 team that had success throwing the football deep against Ohio State. Now, Alabama's the best in the country at doing that, so that will be a point of emphasis. But they're better than the stats say on the back end. So I would say don't let that fool you, but that will be something to watch. And I think I'll close with this. Not last week, against Clemson, the best thing they did to confuse Trevor Lawrence was change the picture at the snap. They did a great job of late rotation and unique looks at the snap to change the picture on Trevor Lawrence. So what he saw and what he thought when the ball was snapped was not what was happening on the back end once the play started. I think they'll continue to do that against Mac.
Thanks, guys. Next, we have another question from Ron Wallace. Ron, you should be able to unmute.
Hey, this question is for Roman, and the second part will be for Jordan and Tim. Roman, now both these teams seem to be similar in nature and kind of sort of evenly matched, offense and defense. But on the defensive perspective, where do you think the game is going to be won? In the trenches down on the line, or do you think it's going to be stopping the pass game and stopping that running game? Because we do know Najee Harris for Alabama can run the ball, and of course Ohio State also have a good running back. So where do you think the game will be won on the defensive side?
I think the game will be won if whatever team can force turnovers in this game. Now, can the game be lost in the trenches? Yes. We saw that last week versus Ohio State, what they did to Clemson. They beat Clemson, and then, yes, Jordan, they did do some different things from the snap of the ball, but Clemson had no chance up front. They got whooped on both sides up front, and you will never win a game that you lose that bad in the trenches the way that Clemson did versus Ohio State. And Ohio State came alive, and their 2 interior defensive tackles are the most disruptive defensive tackles that Alabama will have seen all year long. And those 2 guys will be playmakers for Ohio State. But the defense that will win the game, be the most effective, is not so much about yards and all those other things, but the team, if you listen to Pete Golden, he said something very important the other day in a media conference, that he said that Ohio State has been able to score 40-something points every game. And the only couple times that they didn't do that or that they struggled offensively is not because all of a sudden the team figured them out. It's because they turned the football over. So if Alabama can force Ohio State into a couple of turnovers, then they're going to be more successful. And the same thing's going to go for if Ohio State can force Alabama into a couple of turnovers, they're going to be more successful because both offenses we know of can have explosiveness in them, and they both can play at high levels whenever they get the ball.
Okay, Jordan and Tim. Justin Fields, you know, he played a gutsy game at the Sugar Bowl. You two being quarterbacks, how are you able to, you know, get back into the game, the next game that you know is a big, humongous game for the championship? How do you keep your mind frame right and not focus on what happened to you the last game, but to, you know, bring a championship home to your team?
I think it's because this is for all the marbles. Listen, I mean, it would take a lot for me not to play in a game like this. You know, I think that I think Justin is a tough kid. I think he has had a little bit of time to heal, and I also know they got a great training staff, and so I don't want to ever speculate on how healthy or unhealthy he is. I just think by knowing him, I think that he would do whatever it takes to play and play well and be successful in this game. And so I think if that is by running, I think he'll do it. If it's by staying in the pocket, I think he'll do it. He is such a competitive kid that is so driven. I think it would take a lot for him to miss this game. And I think he is focused on proving the doubters wrong, on proving, you know, everybody wrong, on showing that he is one of the best players, if not the best player in the country. I think that's his mindset, and that's their team's mindset. I think it's an understatement to say there's a chip on Ohio State's shoulder. I think it's a boulder, and I think Justin Fields is leading the way with that edge.
I don't think there's anybody more qualified to answer that question than Tim. So I'll just add very briefly that adrenaline is a beautiful drug. And all of us have been hurt on the field, and you rarely ever notice that between the whistles. It's about managing the pain and managing the mobility in between drives and in between plays. I think that'll be most important. But one of the best things I thought Justin Fields did is sometimes when you get hurt and the adrenaline's going and your mind's going faster than you'd like it to because there's so many factors at play. Can you finish this? Can I make this throw? He stayed patient through it all. He hit the checkdowns when the deep shots weren't there. That was why he didn't turn the ball over. And I thought that was the best thing he did. So if he can stay patient through some of the pain, through the ups and downs of what will surely be this national championship game, there'll be highs and lows for both teams. If he can stay patient, not turn that ball over, as Roman said, that's the equation. But he won't be feeling much pain between the whistles. It'll be between the plays and drives that he'll have to manage that.
We have time for one more question. We're going to go to Porter Hayes. Porter, you should be able to unmute.
Tim, this question's for you. What advantage does Alabama have this week with the award ceremonies being virtual and there's not the theatrics of going to New York City, you know? So how is that going to help Alabama stay focused and be able to prepare for the national championship game?
Porter, that's a really good question. Really good insight by you. I was thinking about it the other night, actually, with all their guys that would have been traveling literally all around the country for all of this stuff. It takes a toll on you, man. I'm going to be honest. It really does. And you think, oh, I'm going to handle as good as I can. But, man, it's the flights and then the car rides and it's everyone all the time. And it's a lot. And I think by it being virtual, I think it helps Alabama a lot. Do I think it's going to play into a win or a loss? No. But I do think that for the stress level of all of their team and their staff and all of these players, I do think it helps a lot. Now, if they were having to go, I don't think they would be going, 4 days before a game. So I think that would have been different. But, the way it is, I think it definitely was a plus for Alabama.
Yeah. Devontae even said he got the Heisman and went straight to sleep afterwards. I don't know. Did Tim Tebow go straight to sleep? You had to at least hang out or do something after winning the Heisman, right?
Oh no, Roman, we were up for a while, buddy, and
okay.
I mean, but it's crazy. So not only, but think about this is what happens, right? So when you win, then you're there and you do interviews for a while, and then we walked across whatever that famous street in New York City, and then we went to the Hard Rock. We took pictures there. And then you do an interview with a bunch of media there, and then you have to come back and you have to, there's, all sorts of things that you have to do. And then it's only a couple hours later when you get to go celebrate with your family and you see all them. So then you get, another jolt of energy because you're hugging all them. And And so next thing you know, you're just shot. So yes, there's a huge kind of silver lining blessing for Devontae and Alabama by not having to go through all of it. I mean, it is really special though. I also want to it's really cool, guys. So I don't want to knock it because the Heisman experience is special. And I do think that they will miss not being able to be there with the Heisman fraternity. Especially more for the other finalists, because Devontae will be able to go back and see it all as the winner. But for Mac not to experience it, for Trevor not to experience it, for Kyle Trask, it's a pretty cool deal that, I wish they could have, but they still had the honor.
They'll still get to hang out with you for that next commercial shoot, though. Where he's walking around the house, probably catching everything that's falling. People knocking stuff off the counters. Wow, got it.
Hey, that's a good idea.
Hey,
watching.
Make sure I get credit.
Yeah. Creative genius.